Today we're stepping into the rugged heart of Columbus, Montana, to uncover the tale of the Columbus Quarry, a place where ancient seabeds turned into the bones of a town and hard-working hands carved out history, one block of sandstone at a time. From the state capitol to Main Street's timeless facades, this quarry didn't just build buildings, it built a legacy. So grab a seat and let's explore the stone-cold soul of Columbus. This is the Big Fat Podcast and our They Gazed on the Beartooths series, where we dig into the stories that shaped our part of Montana, in partnership with the Museum of the Beartooths and made possible by our sponsor, Pinnacle Property of Montana. If at some point you feel that we've brought you some value, then go ahead and hit that like button. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, and then share this episode with your history-loving friends. All right, I'll watch it. I'm all over it. Okay, boom. Today, Columbus Quarry.
Columbus Quarry. Excellent.
We are talking about the Columbus Quarry. We were talking yesterday, and we were like, you know what? There's so much there. We did do a little feature.
Been out there.
On the murder. We have been out there a couple times.
Not exactly. Well, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we were on the edge of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an interesting place. We shot a little. It's been a learning experience for us, right? Both of us that we've.
Yeah, I've never been out there.
Penny, you know everything about the Columbus Quarry. Let's get started.
Well, I don't know that I know everything about anything. I just know enough maybe to spark your interest.
I want to know how many foundations in this town have.
Oh my gosh. I'd like to know that too, actually.
I bet you would.
Because there's a lot of them, I'm sure.
I actually have, speaking of foundations, I have quarry blocks in the bottom of my house just sitting there that I can tote around.
Who owned your house before you?
Not my house, the house that we just...
Oh.
That we talked about.
The Mulvihill house.
Yeah, thanks. I knew it started with an M, that's all I knew.
Yeah. Well, I don't think he ever worked there, but...
The foundation is for
Columbus Sandstone built the Atlas Bar, which old Tom Mulvihill and Mike Jacobs built. And Mike Jacobs was the Italian stonemason at the quarry, so that does not surprise me.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe let's do like a quick stats of kind of the general history, like a summarized general history of that Columbus Quarry, and then maybe we'll go into some of those other things that we just talked about a few minutes ago. We'll go into like that location and all those stories that we were talking about. But what is just the general gist of that quarry, of like when did it open and how many kind of hands did it pass through?
So when it opened is a little bit unknown.
A little fuzzy.
Yeah, because we have a lot of records on the quarry at the museum, and I want to make sure I tell you about how some of them came to the museum later. But in the records we have, it starts, I believe, in 1899, and then it's real loose. I mean, there's not every year and that kind of thing until in about 1903 or so. But there are several buildings that were built out of that sandstone before we have really good records. Okay. So like the school that was built as the high school, where the elementary is today, and then later was the elementary school.
And then torn down, right?
And then torn down. I believe in the 70s, early 80s, somewheres in there, it was torn down. In fact, they found the cornerstone, and it is somehow been incorporated into the lobby.
It's pretty cool how they did it. It's in the front desk.
Yeah. So, in that, and what we call the Little Stone Church was the first school. And it was one of the early buildings made out of the sandstone along with the other school. So the early history is a little bit iffy as to exact dates and that kind of stuff. But there were a lot of quarries all over Montana around 1900 and that kind of thing. So sandstone or other stone mostly sandstone, I would guess, in Montana, ended up being a real important piece to building a lot of the buildings in Montana. But here in Columbus, that's why we named our book what we did. They built Columbus and Montana.
It's a good little book. I've read this book now like twice at least, and dipping into it. It's not really long. It just gets to the point. It is kind of interesting. I mean, I think on the surface, I think most people would be like, why should I be interested in a rock quarry? That's, I don't know. I think some people might find that that's kind of like,
but if you come to Columbus, that's what you kind of hear about first.
Yeah, well, and you see all of the stone on Main Street. And
we have a street named after it.
Yeah, but then when you really see that, look at these beautiful buildings, these old historic buildings, and then you see that, they're not just here, but all the other places that this stone went to, then you're like, it's just different than, I don't know, makes it more interesting, I think, when you really dive into this. It's just like, I think most people, though, would be like, okay, who cares? There was rocks there. Yeah. But no, it went into a lot of historic places.
Well, and I want to read a little sentence here that says the Tri-County News reported on June 18, 1903 that the prime blue sandstone layer was 53 inches thick with another 28 inches materializing underneath as coring progressed. In addition, a lesser quality ledge above the prime layer transitioned to the higher quality stone, resulting in 11 total feet of uniform fine-grained sandstone. And this is, for those of the people that may not where exactly it's located to the west of the big water tank that supplies the town of Columbus water currently today. So that's the location of it. We have some pretty good maps at the museum that shows their pond, because you need water to be able to cut the stone, their cutting rooms, all of that kind of thing that shows what they had. And it was a pretty good employer here in Columbus at that time as well, because they had about 28 employees at one time, even more at one time.
For 1 second, let me go back even farther, like 65 to 75 million years ago. Because also your book points out here that that sandstone, it says right here that rock stratum, known by geologists as the Lenape Formation of late Cretaceous age, 65 to 75 million years old. The Lenape Formation is a nearshore marine sandstone which was deposited in central Montana by a Cretaceous sea as it withdrew to the south. So that is also that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, the geology of it all.
Picture that. We were underwater here. That's why that is there.
Mm-hmm. Have they found any fossils?
That I don't know.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
Marine fossils?
Well, I do know I've found little snail fossils and that kind of stuff in the hills, and you probably have near your place and that kind of thing. If you look, you can see some stuff like that.
Yeah, I need to bring a couple things to town maybe and show to you that we have found out there. We have found some weird stuff out there. So anyway, that's a side story. And then we'll find out if it's something, I'll show it in here or something. But if it's not, then I don't have to waste anybody's time. Anyway. Yeah, so this was all just an ancient seabed. I guess you could say that about everywhere at some point, right? But I found that kind of interesting. All right, let's keep going.
So, I was just looking here to see what year. In 1901, I guess, Mike Jacobs was brought to Columbus to manage the quarry. And his original name was, last name was Jacobucci, which he worked in New York and various other places, but while he was in the States, he changed his name to Jacobs, which is a whole lot easier to say.
Probably. He just got tired of people
jacking his name up.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. His first name was Michelangelo Jacobucci.
Yes. So people that have been in Columbus a long time, there's the Quarry House, which was built by him for his wife and still stands today as a beautiful monument
Yeah, and it's,
to the quarry and Columbus.
yeah, and I guess he as he was foreman over there, what I read at some point was, or that's probably in this book, I'm sure that's where I got most of my information from, but he built that during a real downtime, like they were not doing a lot of business. So some reason at that point in time they weren't doing a lot of business. So he was like, guys, let's cut stone for my house. But he kept his guys working, kept them on the payroll. It's interesting. It seems like they went through a lot of fluctuations of like good jobs, not good jobs, and the number of laborers there went up and down, fluctuated quite a bit.
Yeah, and it was, they were building, or they were cutting stone for a lot of buildings and whatnot, but it wasn't until our state capitol project came to light that really helped the quarry, I believe, make a name for itself. So, did you know our state capitol is built out of Columbus sandstone, which is...
If you don't know, you should.
Exactly. I mean, that's a pretty cool thing for us here in Columbus to say that sandstone in the main part of the original capitol is Columbus sandstone, which was the lowest best bid was $289,891. Back then.
That was a gazillion dollars. That's a gazillion dollars now.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't until a little later that they let the contract for the stone here, for the Columbus stone. So anyway, that's a pretty cool thing. And if you haven't been to our state capitol, it is absolutely an amazing piece of architecture.
What year was that? In
about 1899, I believe that it was built.
So it was the Columbus Quarry, but then what was the actual name of the business at that time? Was it just the Montana? When did the Montana Sandstone Company come into play? Because then there was the Monument Company, which was different.
That
correct?
was later.
Okay.
That was later, but it was 1899 that Montana Sandstone Company was formed.
Okay.
So right after the contract was let, and in 1899 for the Capitol. So they were in the background trying to form things and make it official, and then they did right after the contract was let. So these guys were really artists, though, that worked and carved the stone. There's not only Jacobs, but there were several other people that worked there that ended up staying around here.
Yeah. One of them, I think, was like a Petosa.
Yes.
On one of our videos recently on the Jacobs house, we had a comment from somebody who said, my grandfather was so-and-so Petosa, and he worked on that house. And I don't know. It was interesting. I can't remember the exact comment. I should have had that pulled up.
No. I will pull that up.
Yeah. So I thought, oh, man, that's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I've actually had a couple different Petosa family members come to the museum this summer.
Okay.
So
wow.
That's kind of a common name that we look up.
Because that guy actually stayed with them later on when they were doing the monuments.
He ended up buying the monument yard. He worked with Jacobs and then ended up buying the monument yard.
Okay.
Yeah.
This person says he went to Chicago and had my great grandfather Petosa come to Columbus to work at the quarry with him, and also carved some of the sandstone monuments at the cemetery. Also, who in turn would cut the stone for the blacksmith shop on the south side of the tracks. Pasquale also donated the property for Fireman's Point.
Part of it, yes.
Look at that. Is that the comment on the video? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, it was the Potoses and the Shanes that donated the land for Fireman's Point between the two. Yeah.
We're going to have to reply back to that guy and tell him, yeah, we just talked about this in a podcast episode.
Right.
Yeah, because that's interesting. And these guys were artists, you're correct. They weren't just like, working in a rock mine. No, this is all about art.
Yeah, we have several tools that have been given to the museum, and they're pretty fascinating to look at. And then there's a guy in Billings, I can't recall his name right now, but he came and donated some of Mike Jacobs' tools and some other tools that he had picked up through the years at sales and whatnot. And he has done some repair work on several buildings around the state. And he came and showed me what tool was used for like what. So we went over to the old jail behind the courthouse, and he said this tool would have been used to do these joints between the sandstone, and this tool would have been used for this and that. And
so I have a question for you. On the Jacobs house, do you know why 3 sides look different than the other side?
That I don't know.
Do you know what she's talking about?
Mm-hmm, I do. Yeah, because the one side looks kind of rough, and the other are all finished.
Very
stone.
meticulously, beautiful.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of is it was on Quarry Street, and it was seen, those 3 sides were seen more than the
that's what
west
I
side.
think too, but who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe they were on a time crunch.
Yeah. It's a beautiful house, and we're so fortunate here in Columbus that not the previous owner, a couple owners ago, when the balcony and the front porch all fell in, she went and found somebody up in, I believe it was Big Fork, Montana, that could recast those in concrete. So he came and meticulously loaded all of those pieces that fell and broke onto pallets, hauled them back to Big Fork, and remolded them and put that whole front porch area back.
Kirk has had to do some more work on it this year. Remember I told you about that?
Yeah.
And Kirk and Sue are very about taking care of it and making it stay
right
what it is.
Yeah, and from what I understand, it was about $300,000 to have that porch redone.
It was a lot.
Holy
so
mackerel.
the cool thing about that, not her, but whoever she sold it to after her, that guy kept all of the receipts. I'm sure they're still in that house. There's every receipt in there because I walked
from that work.
Yep, because I walked through it when he had it for sale, and he was with him, and he was all about showing me all the history, which was really cool.
Yeah.
But because she had a lot other stuff that she did inside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a beautiful home. It has changed a lot. It's kind of fun to walk through with Kay Walterman because she lived in it when she was younger, and she said, well, this used to be this way, and this used to be this way, and anyway.
It's just gorgeous.
It is. It's a beautiful home.
What was surprising to me was the basement, because at that time, those basements are, 9 foot, maybe? And I wouldn't have thought that those ceilings down there in a basement in when did he build it?
Early 1900. Yeah, 1904 is what sticks in my mind, but
would be 9 foot. Why would you do that?
Yeah, because Jacobs doesn't look like he's a very tall man in the pictures.
I don't know, but a lot of times back then, high ceilings were kind of a thing in general. I don't know why they would have done that in the basement.
But, I mean, they would have had to dig all that out.
Yeah.
It's not just that they're 9 foot. It's that they would have had to dig all that.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Do you see houses that are that old with full basements? I mean, and granted, it's probably been finished over the years to make it actually be a basement
Mm-hmm.
that is usable, because they probably had, like, I don't know, their coal, whatever, stove down there or whatever. But I just found that very interesting.
Mhm.
When I
Yeah,
looked
that
through
is.
it. It was surprising.
Yeah. Well, and did you know that the sidewalks, if you look at the sidewalks that run north and south on
1910.
the side, but they're sandstone.
Yep. They're the original.
Yeah.
I was telling Milo that. So Travis and Jeremy, when they survey something in that area, that's what I was told, was a lot of times there's no pens. And so what do they have to do is they have to go back to the sidewalk, because the sidewalk is the original, what they pull from somehow in survey land. Yeah, it's very interesting because those sidewalks are original.
Yeah.
I think in some places there's literally property lines stamped into the concrete as well. In some of the places, you'll see and
in
they'll
the
have it
sidewalks.
in the sidewalk, and you'll have
In Columbus?
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
and I could be wrong on that, but I feel like that's what I've seen, because when I lived here in town, they had street names stamped into the
Yeah.
sidewalks. But I thought that they also had even some property lines, like that's where they put the marker was the.
And those sidewalks have held up better than some of the other.
Right. Right. They definitely have. The other thing about that house is there was sandstone put around the
Yep.
exterior. And I know my husband, when he worked for R&H Concrete, they had to go in and get some of that out of there and put concrete, because some of it was tilting and causing
I do
some of
remember
the
that, yeah.
water to go into the basement. And so I remember him saying that it was a lot of work to get, because I think it was like a foot deep of
Oh,
sandstone.
Really? Well, and then they
Wow.
have that fence around some of it, which
That's
is
on sandstone,
so
I believe.
gorgeous.
Yeah,
Yeah. Which I know that's been redone, but it's really pretty.
it is. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that fence shows up in all the historic images.
All the way around it, or just on two sides?
I believe it's just the two sides.
Yeah, because there's question on the one side where that property line is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. It is a
And
neat
your
place.
little house is in this photo too.
See?
You were wondering if there was a photo.
No.
There you have it.
It's in there.
You don't even have to look very far.
No, no.
You
But-
have a house that's in a history book. That's awesome. Have you seen that photo?
Mm-mm. Oh, yeah, there it is.
Does it say what year?
I don't know that it says that, but we have maps that would show when that house showed up on these old fire insurance
Yeah.
maps that you may want to come in and look at, Donna,
I
because
will.
that would be kind of fun for you to do.
Yeah, because
So let's pop
there's
up to
several houses there, so it's hard to say what
Yeah.
it is.
let's pop up to 1904 and that monument that made a trek back east.
Yeah, so there's an image that we have in the exhibit that shows this monument, and that was one of the first things that I noticed when I acquired the photograph, which is part of the Montana Historical Society collections. They had 2 images of the quarry, which was pretty fabulous for me when we were doing this project. But to see that monument in there, and the photograph, I believe, was dated April of 1904. So it was just before it was shipped by railroad to the World's Fair. And it just amazes me because you can still go see that monument. It's now the Wimsett Monument at the Mountain View Cemetery. But it is so detailed. It has oak leaves and other kind of leaves and ribbon, carved ribbon. All this stuff's carved on it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a big vertical log, and you can see all of the bark and all of these different things that are carved into that log, which is just a beautiful piece. And it says that it was carved by Louis Quarry, I'll just read the sentence. A spectacular sandstone piece carved in 31 days at the cost of $186 by Louis Quarry. It's just an amazing
Do you think,
piece of art.
like when they say at a price of $186, do you think that's just like what he was paid over that time, or?
Probably so. I mean, those guys
the
were making
cost,
somewhere
yeah.
like, they were making like $6-8 a day back then. I mean, I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably what they're figuring for cost, I guess, would just be his
Yeah, because
labor.
what else would it be? I mean, you already have the tools, I guess.
Well,
Yeah.
and then in 1905, Sarah Wimsett died in December of 1905, and a $325 charge in the Montana Sandstone Company business records that we have at the museum was probably the cost of carving the Wimsett name and setting the monument in the Mountain View Cemetery.
And
And
that's
it
up
was-
here, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But that probably didn't even get placed for a little while after that, right? Because when it went back east, how long was it out there?
Not very long.
I thought it was out there for a couple of years.
No.
Okay. Maybe I understood that wrong. I thought it sat out there. Oh, you can hang on. I thought it was sat out at the World's Fair for at least a couple of years.
No, not that I know of. I think it was just taken out there and brought back when they were done with the fair.
Because I think the fair, it did go on for a long time. That fair
Yeah,
lasted.
maybe.
It lasted a few
So,
years.
do we know like how many people worked out there? Like when they were building the Capitol, or I would think that was like maybe the height of it.
I know
don't-
that during that period, at least what I've read, is that it was the number one employer around here during that period, and I think they fluctuated, but I think they sometimes had up to like 45 guys or so. Do you think that's
Yeah.
fairly accurate? About 45 guys out there working at peak times.
But okay, so did they chisel the? I don't know a better word for it, but chisel the stuff out there, or they did that down here?
No, they worked everything out there at first. And then when they started doing more of the monuments, then they moved the monument yard, which is not very far from where we're sitting.
Right.
Just kitty corner
mean,
across the block.
Like literally through that wall behind you is the alley. And if you go down this alley about, I don't know, 150 feet,
It's right there.
you're there.
To the end of the street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But-
But this Wimsett monument that we call the Wimsett monument was carved up there at the quarry site because that photograph shows that that's where it
And I think
left.
most people, I know I didn't realize this, that Quarry Street, there used to be, as the railroad comes in here, there was a spur that came off of and went up Quarry Street and then curved over there up where the quarry was there by the sea on the hill.
Yep.
And that's where they would load the train cars and strap all this stuff down and then bring it back out here. Anyway, so
Yeah, so it was shipped from the site.
yeah.
So that was. I'm trying to figure out how. Let's see. Let's fast forward to about 8 years ago or so. Ivan and Betty McQuarrie. Betty's dad used to own the monument site here in town, and Ivan was cleaning it up because his brother-in-law wanted to build a big building because he restores old cars. So Ivan started cleaning up the monument yard, and there were cannot think of his first name, but Braun was his last name, and he had a mechanic shop there, and they had all kinds of cars in there, Model Ts, all kinds of parts and pieces and tires and rims and you name it in there. Anyway, Ivan was hauling all that stuff out, and one day he ends up at the museum and he says, "Penny, you got to come with me."
Let's take a short break for this You Should Know moment, brought to you by our sponsor, Pinnacle Property of Montana.
You should know there's a killer on the loose. So who got whacked, or should I say, who got picked? 24-year-old Joseph Bogner was an employee at the Columbus Quarry, which was the largest employer in town from 1899 to 1915. Bogner lived in a small cabin at the quarry, which meant he should never be late for work. On February 10th, 1900, he was late. When co-workers opened the cabin door, they found it had been ransacked. Even the floor had been dug up. They also found poor Joseph with a pickaxe through his melon. Why? Because Bogner had just come into $1,000, but he was too chatty around the wrong person. Columbus town folks raised over $800 for a private investigator, but the killer was never found, but neither was the $1,000. You see, the day before, Bogner had given it to his boss to send it to his sister back in Germany. Joseph Bogner resides here at the Columbus Cemetery in plot 189. You should know, because if you don't watch your mouth, you might need to watch your melon.
So I head over to the monument yard with him, and here he unearthed, underneath all those cars, all this sandstone. So that helped us identify, too, what they did at the quarry. Because
Did he not know that was the...
we all knew it was the monument yard, but we didn't know all that stone was there.
Oh, I see.
Was it buried? Was it actually under dirt?
It was under, no. It was under tires and cars and
okay.
stuff. And so, and I imagine that when it was an auto shop.
And these were not
they couldn't move that stone.
But these are old cars. These were this was a rust yard, right? I mean, there wasn't 1972 something parked there. This was really old stuff.
Model Ts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Parked in this yard.
Old stuff. And on top of the sandstone. And when he uncovered and took all these cars and hauled them off, I think you'll have to ask him, but I think it was a dozen cars he hauled out of there. Maybe more, but in various different conditions, yes. Anyway, I was just amazed when I saw this stone. Some of the stone, and now we have it all in the exhibit at the museum outside, but they were 4 foot wide by a foot thick, and I think 6 or 8 feet long. So they would cut those big chunks of sandstone out at the quarry and then bring them down here and process them into whatever they were making, building blocks, monuments, whatever. So there were 3 or 4 of those huge pieces, and there were a couple that were broken in half. There was building pieces, a lot of building blocks, blank headstones, footstones for the headstones.
Don't you have a headstone up there that has, they carved the wrong
date? Yeah, but it's granite.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, there's a headstone over there too where they spelled sacred wrong. I don't know if that one's in granite or sandstone, but it says "in scared memory."
Yeah.
That guy was like.
So it's just not typing.
Son of a.
Right. And backspace.
That somebody came over there and they were just like, hey, Carl. Why don't you come take a look at this, Carl? What you did here?
Side note, we got a little thing in Jamaica when we were there, and we wanted the guy to chisel in Jamaica, 2000, whatever we were there. The guy's from Jamaica. Spelled Jamaica wrong. He forgot an I, but there was enough room to chisel in the I.
Yeah.
That's so classic.
Yeah, that's spelled wrong.
Back then, they didn't obviously care about that kind of stuff because there was wooden boxes and that kind of stuff that came from the monument yard, and it spelled Columbus, Columbos, B-O-S. Yeah. Yeah, so it was...
Whoever's job it was that day, they didn't go very high in school.
The actual victim of the Quarry murder, the murder that took place up there, the date is wrong on his stone. Mm-hmm. When you go and you look at that.
Yeah.
And we did a little feature on that, but that date was wrong.
Yeah. So anyway, and then there were, I don't know what you'd call the piece, but the point of a house, the peak. Mm-hmm. There's a full carved peak that's got a heart and different kinds of leaves, and it's just absolutely gorgeous, and it's in the exhibit as well. All these things were preserved basically underneath these cars, and they just look beautiful.
How did you get them out of that yard over there without scuffing them up?
So Milo was really careful and used a skid steer.
Who, Ivan?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Ivan, did I say Milo?
Yeah.
Maybe you were there in spirit.
I was
don't
like, I don't remember this.
I was like, is there another Milo?
No. Ivan was really careful, though. He put them on stickers. I don't know if you know what
I do.
It's a small piece of
I
wood,
do.
and
Yep.
put them on a
Yes.
flatbed trailer.
Yeah.
And hauled them over to the museum. Brought his skid steer over there, and placed them
Wow.
exactly where I wanted them when he unloaded them.
Yeah, because you're not going to move them again.
No.
And you had to be careful because, and that's amazing how much
Sandstone has to be brittle.
it's
doesn't
soft.
It? Yeah.
It is.
It scuffs easy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, there are a few scuffs on some of, but that building piece, he was really careful with that and made sure he handled it from the backside and not the front. And then as we were
Who
pulling,
gets something like that made and then says, just kidding.
right? Yeah, that's the one mysterious piece that we're not sure
Where
who
what it was.
People who welch on lawnmowers, and that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. So, we don't know what building that was supposed to go for, or if it was, we don't know. It almost looks like maybe it was going to be a small mausoleum piece, maybe.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
I'm not sure.
It looks like a front. I don't know how you explain it either.
Still,
'cause it's,
why would you request having that built? Somebody had to request it, right?
Yeah.
You just don't build something like that.
People today
maybe
do
when they had
crazy
maybe
things.
when they had downtime, maybe they said, "Hey, how about I build one of these and let's see if we can sell it."
Right. Well, okay. So in today's time, when would that have been? Do you think that was
19 teens probably that they were
no,
over here.
19, I would say, probably in the teens.
So in marketing today, you would do something like that, take pictures of the things that you have and market it.
Have as a sample, yeah.
They don't, I mean, they wouldn't have sent out a catalog,
Right.
They didn't have that. So very
I don't know.
interesting.
You know what? It could be. I mean, back then, like, you could buy a house out of a catalog. So I wonder if they
True.
did have some type of brochures or some type of
Like
don't know.
Sears catalog.
Well, if
Yeah.
you look on, let's see what page it is in the book.
April's parents out in Baker were living in a house that was a Sears
The
catalog.
Craftsman. You can still in Billings they have some of those houses, and if you've seen one, then you kind of know what they look like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So on page 41 of the book, there were 9 possible standard upright monument options that people could choose from. And Jacobs, we have copies of those at the museum.
Bam.
So he had these drawings of what you could do, so people
Oh,
could
I
choose
see.
from them. So basically, that was his catalog.
Yeah.
So I want to back up just a little bit and talk more about a couple of other pieces, because then we may need to wrap up by that time. But there's a couple of other pieces that were found with this sandstone, and they were grinding stones. So Jacobs was...
And explain grinding stones.
Yes.
I will put some... this is going to be a crazy one because I'm going to
I'm
be
just
putting all
gonna-
kinds of photos and videos in.
I'm just going to go ahead and read this
Okay.
one section. Jacobs implemented the existing MSC business plan from 1899 to manufacture grindstones for industrial and residential customers. According to the Montana Bureau of Agriculture, Industry and Labor, the main reason for this new industry was the quarry superintendent's dissatisfaction with the available products to keep tools perfectly edged. A 60-inch stone from the Cleveland, Ohio quarries only lasted 30 days because it had hard and soft spots. Columbus sandstone had a more consistent quality, lasting up to 8 months, and grinding tools in 1/2 a time of the Ohio stone. An optician made a grinding stone from a piece of MSE sandstone taken from an NPR car and declared the stone equal to those from Wales, costing $4 per pound. The superintendent of Anaconda Copper Mining Company Foundry said that he would rather pay 25 cents a pound for Columbus sandstone than 2.5 cents for the Eastern stone, since the local product was worth 10 times as much. The first year of grindstone manufacturing produced 150 tons and valued at $3,000 that were marketed in Helena, Spokane, Anaconda, Butte, Bozeman, and Billings. So these grinding stones, they had small ones that were 18 inches in diameter and 2.5, 3 inches thick, and they were put on a frame where a farmer, rancher could sit on like a metal bicycle seat, for lack of a better way to explain it, and he could pedal this thing and sit there and sharpen his knives or some of his hay cutting equipment and that kind of stuff. But there's one in a full frame that we have in the exhibit, and then there's one huge stone that's probably 6-7 inches thick and 36 inches in diameter, and so that would have been one that they would have used to sharpen their tools to cut the stone. And I would bet a lot of farmers and ranchers all around this area have remnants or pieces, at least the frame of one of those grinding stones.
Yeah.
There was one that we had in our collections given by a local person, and the geologist that did the research on this for this book and did all of the studies and everything, I said, is there a way to identify the grindstone that we had to see if it came from Columbus sandstone? And so she had a booklet that you could identify sandstone and colors and all that kind of thing, and we took that out there, and she says, you pick, which do you think it looks like? And I chose the one, and she said it's Columbus sandstone.
Wow.
So
the Cretaceous period was good to Columbus.
Yes. So the sandstone thing ended up being a really important piece of the quarry. I mean,
yeah.
If you could get something that's going to last 8 months, why would you ship it in from back east?
So up on a hill, they identify that there's this quarry stone that they're going to use. How did they, I mean, I know that you have tools, but did they also use like dynamite at the beginning to...
Oh, yeah. They had to use...
To break it up somehow? Or?
They had to use something like that. Because you can see in the quarry itself, if you ever get a chance to go up there, you can see drill.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
Looks like.
So the other important piece is water. You have to have water to be able to cut stone. And they were having trouble with the water source in Kaiser Creek. Today, we know Kaiser Creek sometimes has water in it and sometimes it doesn't. And water was very critical for them. And you can see in the maps, they had a pond up there. So they had a source that they brought in from Kaiser Creek, but they needed a more continual source. So they worked on trying to, they were thinking about bringing water from the Yellowstone at one time, and that failed. So instead, they chose to bring it in from the Shane Ditch. You know where the Shane Ditch is?
I don't.
The Shane Ditch comes in from the Stillwater.
Yeah.
Up the Stillwater a ways, and then it comes across. The Shane Ditch was put in by Tom Shane to be able to get irrigation water to Flaherty Flat. And those were his kids' allotments and some of the other William White's allotments and that kind of thing. So the Shane Ditch was put in to bring water to Flaherty Flat for crops. So then they decided to think about the Shane Ditch supplying the water for the quarry. So they put a 2-foot pipe underground and then over the top of the Stillwater and the Yellowstone so they could supply water to the town of Columbus and the quarry. So the property that Parks Real Estate has for sale on Highway 78, just after you cross, there's a couple places in there where you can still see, if you know where to look, you can see where that 2-foot round pipe.
It's still there?
There's a piece you can see in it. It's in the ground.
Oh.
You'll have to ask Jeremy about it because he was asking me questions about it, and I've
he's
actually
probably out there
photographed.
surveying,
Yeah. So it came from the Shane Ditch, which was up there on the hill, still is up there on the hill. Came down, and it was above the river. In fact, we have a couple of amazing photographs when it froze up and big, huge icicles hanging off of it and everything. But it supplied the water for the quarry and the town of Columbus, which is a major feat.
So why were they able to do that but weren't able to take it from the Yellowstone? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
Yeah, it seems kind of strange, and it may explain that a little bit more in the book.
Was it just a gravity thing that it just worked out coming from a higher point?
Maybe.
Probably.
Versus, do we pump it from here, or do we just
gravity?
Let gravity bring it across from over here at this level?
Another thing they found when they were doing the elementary school renovation is they found it in the ground there. And it was a wood 2-foot round pipe. So people did take pictures of that, and they were wondering if I wanted a section of it, but the wood was in not very good shape, and the metal was really corroded too.
Yeah.
But there were rings that were left. So anyway, it's just a fascinating story that...
So anytime somebody digs around here, the moral of the story is call Penny.
Call before you dig, and then call Penny.
You might learn something.
Call Penny first.
Yeah. Anyway, it's pretty fascinating history.
So,
yeah, it is.
Not just the Atlas. Was the Atlas built from that quarry stone?
Yep.
Okay.
The Yellowstone Bank.
Is it all of those buildings?
Yep. Right there together. The Columbus Mercantile Building. And then
I went to see Cody Schlehuber yesterday, right? Sensory photography. And I've been in that building in the basement.
Yep.
But that's
Columbus Sandstone.
Sandstone too.
Yep. Valley Federal Credit Union building.
What was that building again?
The which that Cody's in?
Mm-hmm. It changed hands a few times. It was
it's been several things.
It was
through
like
the years.
a men's
dress shop,
and there was a few things he was telling me.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. You'll have to come in and look at the Sanborn maps because they're fascinating. And the earliest one we have, I want to say, is either 1893 or 1895, and then there might be one 1899, and then it jumps to 1903. But it shows the whole changes in the town development and the streets and everything. So
pretty incredible stuff.
Yeah.
Columbus Quarry. We have our stone all over the place, and the stone is at Yellowstone Park in buildings.
Yep, that's the engineers building at Mammoth is another building that's on the National Register that's made out of Columbus sandstone. The Parmalee Library, which the Western Heritage Center in Billings is made of Columbus sandstone.
I was going to say there has to be something in Billings.
Yeah, and in fact, in the rear of the book, that was one of the things that I really wanted to do when we printed this is I wanted to do...
Oh, all the places that it is.
So you can see...
And this little book is available at the gift shop at the museum. And
we have a date, but some of them, if it's just trim, like there's a building, the Tim building in Anaconda, in 1911, they sent trim for that building. So it may not be the entire building, but it could be sills and trim.
I like how this says... It says addresses, 608 Pike Avenue, 612 Pike Avenue, 243 5th Street, and then just Harry Jacobs' house.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. But you can see a lot of buildings in Butte. Of course, a lot in Columbus, Miles City.
So there's so many in Butte. Did they have a connection there?
Well, Link and Hare was a architectural firm back then, and Link in particular really liked using Columbus sandstone. So in historic preservation, when people do research on buildings and it comes to link, a lot of times he did use Columbus sandstone all over Montana.
When was this book done?
Just a few years ago.
Have you found any more that weren't in here?
Oh, there probably is. Like I said, because we just used the records that we had, and then we knew like the Little Stone Church and the
Because these are mostly
school.
Montana. I mean, Wyoming and two in Washington, but
Yeah.
mostly Montana.
Yeah.
What's interesting, I think it's in that book as well, is the relationship between that quarry and the railroad.
Mm-hmm.
And the railroad could really just make or break your business. They were really, just how we learned in Park City. They're like, oh, you won't change the name of the town? Well, we'll just go over here and we'll just build our big rail yard over here and we'll kill your little town, But he talks about struggles in there. I guess there's letters between Mike Jacobs and other partners where he's frustrated with the railroad and the general manager of the railroad of this area because the pricing. It was also availability of we need cars up in here to load these things, and then it was we need them moved, we need them shipped. Working around the railroad schedule, and then what the railroad was going to charge them in tonnage to carry this for them. And sometimes the railroad was playing hardball, and it was affecting these guys' business on whether they could get these buildings that are projects that they're selling, get this stone cut and sent over there. Then there's places where at the delivery site, they're like, hey, it just showed up and it's broken. And I mean, so all of a sudden this Mike Jacobs is all frustrated because he's like, that we put it on the train cars and it was fine. And like, so how did this get broken during transit on the railroad, or was it you guys unloading?
Well,
and
I'm
everything.
sure the railroad is so smooth.
Yeah. Right.
Well, and the other thing, the railroad used a lot of of their stone for riprap.
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, I can't remember how many tons, but Linda Dutcher, when she was doing the research, that was a question I had for her, and now I can't recall how many tons they ship for themselves.
Yeah. Wow. Well,
You just think, and to this day, we don't have any images of what that hill looked like.
Yeah, that's
before
what
the quarry.
I was reading that there is no images.
Yeah. Because I'd like to know what it looked like.
Yeah, how much did they take off?
And it was a lot.
Mm-hmm.
They took a lot out of there. And it wasn't like 20 tons of riprap. It's like a lot.
there's no photos of that area, like let's say 1880s, pointing back that direction.
Before they started quarrying, no. It's very unfortunate, but that's why we need
There's got to be a photo.
We need to
going that
time
direction.
travel.
Man, you know what?
I just want to go back and see stuff.
I bet there is a photo somewhere, but you're looking at something else when you're looking at that photo and you're not even...
You know what's interesting now is like, I mean, I know it's too late now, but what's interesting now is like you can, if it was like anything going forward from now, you could just get on Google Earth and they have a timeline thing where you can say, oh, I want to see what this place looked like in 1985, and you can scroll back.
Those are really cool.
That's wild. Yeah. Because we were talking about Nellie's Corner, and we were talking about that in one of the podcasts a while ago or something, and April was telling me about it growing up here and how many people died on Nellie's Corner. Anyway, I was thinking about that. I go, I don't remember what that place looked like, but I bet you I can get on Google Earth and just scroll back. I haven't done that yet, but I want to do that just to see what that corner looked like. Anyway.
Yeah.
But we can't. Like, my point is like, wish you could just scroll back.
I bet you when you look at pictures too, if there is something, you don't realize, because it's changed so much, that you wouldn't even realize that's what you're looking at.
Well, and we've got a lot of photographs around 1900 and that kind of thing, but it all shows the quarry in there. You can see the quarry buildings.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that we've looked at, but it's still hard to tell, is like there's old maps, and of course they show the lines with the elevation, but you still can't really get a visual. So anyway, still going to be some mysteries there. So,
and when you think about those dates, 1899, 1898, they're cutting stone over there. That is 13, 14 years after Custer's last stand, the battle at the Little Bighorn. That's not a very long time. Like, this was Indian Wars to we're cutting stone for buildings and downtown and, railroad, shipping our stuff.
Up.
I mean, in 13, 14 years, that's really, we went from Indian Wars to, we're booming out here. We're building stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's wild.
Yeah,
and it's not that long. I look back at the last 14, 15 years right now, and I'm like, man, it's been a blur.
Yeah.
It's just gone by so fast. It wasn't that long ago. It's
and
incredible,
now it's
the
been
growth.
125 years since this was at its peak.
Yeah. Well,
it's crazy.
We had a good Cretaceous period. Hey, thank you. That was informative. Love the Columbus Quarry. Glad we got to dive into that a little bit more. And so thanks.
You bet.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
This episode of the Big Fat Podcast in our They Gazed on the Beartooth series was brought to you by Pinnacle Property of Montana. Let Pinnacle Property of Montana help you make your Montana dream come true. Their contact information is below in the description. You can show your support by hitting that like button, subscribing if you haven't already, and sharing this episode with your history-loving friends. We'll see you next time.